power to create everything you desire. Acceptance. Major key. Acceptance, major key. Remember, healing is destructive as fuck. Healing is destructive. Ride with me real quick. I had to accept. We must accept that if everything external of me is a reflection, in order for me to experience the lesson or observe, to master applying to my lesson, I had to accept that I was my biggest diversion. I was my biggest diversion. What's up? What's up? I had to accept that I was my biggest diversion. This helped me understand that every time that I complained, I was seeking to divert based on my wants, or to maintain the perception of that of what I have not dealt with. When I started embracing gratitude, that helped me embrace the lesson that was to help me change my perspective. Got to ask yourself a question. I had to ask myself a question a lot of times. Think about you wanting to get your credit right. Think about you wanting to get your credit right. Let's use that as the example. Think about you wanting to get your credit right. You know what's on your credit. You know what's on there. You know what's on your credit score. Even if you don't know, you have the ability to seek that of what's on your credit score. You look at your credit score. You see medical bills. You see evictions. You see times that you co-sign for something. You see loans. You see repossessions. You see all of these things on your credit score. Remember, reaction is comfort. So when you look on your credit score, what you see is simply the surface. That is the physical manifestation of those emotions that you put into that space. So whether it be the eviction from an apartment or house or whatever, now you looking at your house, and the only things that you're able to pull up to make that real is remembering what you did inside of that house. You remember the good memories, you remember the goods, but the key is for the memory to be applied to, so we no longer divert from it or put it off or look for this other way to avoid the lesson. We got to look at that negative. The negative effects of why I did it. It was easy for me to say, well, yeah, I got this eviction because I put my perception into others that they would uphold and provide or nurture this space. Here's the thing. As long as I'm separated from my shadow needs something to feed it, to continuously feed it, in order for me to maintain my perception of myself. It needs something to feed that perspective. So now when I look into the space, the lesson was there. Just like my wants, just like my need. My need was the lesson. Now, I can easily be like, all right, cool, I'll get to that this time, I'll get to that this week, I'll get to that here, here, and here, based on maintaining the perception. I won't go any deeper because of how it makes me feel. It's forcing me, remember, the trigger is forcing you to become emotionally present. Looking at that credit score, looking at that mark on your credit score or that scar, go look at Jumper. We don't talk about Jumper too. Go look at that scar. All it gives you the emotional relevance of you were angry, you were depressed, you were whatever emotion came up. That's what you saw when you looked at that. But I have to become emotionally present. I have to first, just like I opened up with, I must admit that I am my greatest diversion in my life based on my perception of the quality of the spaces in myself. Based on this perception, from that wound, from that space, from that shadow, from that darkness, I created what I needed inside of that space. Everything that you got in every space that you were in, you got everything that you needed. That was your lesson. But you were looking at the one. You were looking at maintaining that one. I had to realize that I was trying to maintain the one. And if I could do what I did within that space, I could have looked for another way out. I didn't want to suspend it. I didn't want to suspend that aspect, because without it, it really made me break. It would force me to break down. Without that, it forces me to break down. Without that aspect that is still in that darkness, it'll force me to break down. It's going to force me to face myself. It's going to force me to accept fault. It's going to force me to accept fault, get triggered by my faults, and force me to sit inside of that space. And it hurts. While I was stuck in this diversion control, trying to control the diversion, it was easy because the shadow was already present and it was already feeding me. It allowed me to focus on the version that was in other people's minds. The version of me that was in others' minds. That fed the suggestions of their mindset, and the things that they did not deal with was the suggestion that gave me my identity. Whether it was, I've been hurt before, okay. So now inside of that space, being my greatest diversion, ooh, this is my chance to help somebody. This is my chance to do this, this, and this. But that builds more onto the already in-debt loan that you already have in play. That already puts more onto the loan. You already have, now you need something to co-sign that. Their shadow, their suggestions, their perception. Even to the fear of, what if I take a day off? Something as simple as me taking a day off was convoluted at best, based on the way I would feel. Remember, your body tells you exactly what you need every time that you need it, but if you're not listening to it, then you're not going to do it. You're always going to find a reason. You're always going to create that stipulation. Well, I can't do this right now because I got to do this. That's the complaint. Remember, the complaint is deeper. The complaint can be something as simple. The complaint itself, when we think about the complaint, it's simple in the content of, I can say to myself, I can't rest. I can't sleep. I gotta get this done in this certain amount of time. I watched y'all remember the Martin episode when Richard Pryor was on there? And he was like, Richard Pryor was like, hey, the key to this game, the key to what you need to do is realizing that you are ageless. No matter what age group, whether it's too young or too old, you ain't in neither one of those groups. That's the same thing with your internal work. Yeah, that's the same thing with your internal work. The way that I would avoid my lessons would be on this intellectual aspect of me being inside of a space and looking at the space and feel like the space is reacting. I'm reacting to the space, and the space isn't reacting to me. So to maintain this aspect, we're going to get deeper to this on Friday with this breaking generational curses. But in order to understand this aspect of myself, I had to stop that point. I had to sit at that point. Why do I always feel that this world, I'm reacting to the world and the world's not reacting to me? Because that was the truth of it. Remember, everything is that reflection in that space. So everything was simply enhancing the lesson that I needed to learn. This is how I started looking at my perspective in that shadow. This is how I started looking at my perspective. Everything in my space is going to give me a lesson, because I got to switch to I'm in gratitude for every lesson when I wake up. I'm in gratitude. I'll give you an example. Today was my first time on the ARC trainer. Y'all saw that video. That was the ARC trainer at the gym. That was the ARC trainer. I set my pace for 20 minutes. I set my pace for 20 minutes. In my mind, I said I want to do 30, but I set the pace at 20 minutes. I set the level. I chose the level that I wanted. I chose the level of resistance, and I started going in. When it got down to, because it was at 20 minutes, when 5 minutes elapsed, I went in, I pressed the button, I took it back up 5 more minutes because I wanted to get to 30. I needed to push myself to get to 30. So I kept adding the 5 minutes to it. Before I knew it, I was at the 30 minutes. Watch that joint. When y'all saw it, it said the 15 minutes because I went in and it said the 15 minutes because I added 15. It allowed me to add the 15 minutes to it from that original 20. I ended up doing 35 minutes. One of the highest settings and the highest levels in the highest level of resistance. After that, left from there, today was core. Core and conditioning, the rest of the condition. So when I do a core workout, the core is the main goal. And then everything, the shoulders, back, the workouts I did before that means Monday is chest. Monday for me is chest and arms. Tuesday is back, lower back, and conditioning arms. Wednesday is core and then conditioning back, shoulders, arms, and chest. See, this is the key. In order for me to stop diverting from my course of action, I had to stop looking at the result. I had to stop looking for the result. The result was based on that version of my old perception. My path was all in my aspects of my perspective. How I wake up and what I do as I wake up. What I set my tone for. When things come into my space, I'm in gratitude for that lesson. What is it time for me to learn? And as I started doing these things in that aspect, for example, woke up in gratitude yesterday, woke up in gratitude, did my meditation, did my normal day to day, typed up some consultation letters, sending out consultation letters and still sending them out, Natal Chart analysis letters. And I'm sitting here in gratitude that I'm able to be inside of this space because now I can look back at my past. It's cool to go back to the past. It's cool. But I'm looking at it based on where I'm at, from where I was to where I'm at now. I'm not looking at that because my shadow is no longer back there. I've integrated that shadow to this point. I've assessed that demon or that Damien or that genius or that line of intelligence that I did not understand, and I brought it to the current state. So now I'm always going to be present. So now I'm sitting there, I'm like, yo, this time, 3 years ago, I wasn't doing something like this. But this time, 5 years ago, I remember sitting at my job, sitting in the office, typing up paperwork, typing in the truck order, typing up write-ups, typing up all this other stuff. But none of that, all of that was to feed my perception of the identity that I maintained in that space. But now that I'm in this space, in my present moment, now I understand why I had to do that. Now I understand why I had to go through writing up write-ups and doing a truck order and doing all this receiving and putting up. I understand why I had to do that work. See, that's the point of you accepting that you were your greatest diversion. Exactly, yeah. I'm not looking at it from a point of me staying. There's a difference between me nourishing myself and embracing a lesson and getting stuck in the nostalgia. Remember, positive and negative. I can go back and look at the worst cases in my life and have a nostalgic moment that maintains an identity that why I do what I do now. I can go back to 1999 when I was lost. I can go back to 1999 when I was in the 9th grade and I was upset because I had my schedule in a new space and I didn't know how to navigate through the space. And I was like, damn, I got to get to class. I got to get to class. Something that simple leaves an imprint. Something that simple leaves that imprint. Something that simple leaves your imprint. It feeds that aspect of the regret for me not going to class. I talked about this in the podcast, the aspect of that regret. It fed that same regret for me not getting to class on time. Me not getting to where I thought I needed to get at that time. Me not calming myself down. Me having that negative self-talk. It fed that same echo of regret. It fed that same echo of acceptance. It fed that same echo. See, you got to understand that as long as you're trying to stay the biggest diversion in your life and you sitting in that position, that perception, that pessimistic, that it got to stay there. It has to stay. It has to remain. Because that's the only way you contact with your shadow. That's the only way you've learned in that learned behavior to deal with your shadow. It's based on avoidance. I used to get so focused on everything that I wanted, I was losing everything that I needed. Whether it was to the aspects of, I need, exactly. I can go back, and this is unlocking your childhood, because I remember from one of my past life cycles, I remembered I couldn't remember anything about my childhood. I remember I could not remember anything about my childhood, nothing definite. I couldn't remember certain things, and the things that I did remember were questionable to me because I wasn't ready to embrace it. I wasn't ready to embrace my me being different, me being the oddball. I wasn't ready to accept it yet. That little nugget that was back there. But that was some of my most powerful times. I can go back to a point in time in my childhood when I was 8 now, and I own it. And I remember being at my grandmother's house. All my cousins are down there, and we sitting down there playing touch football. And I remember I got tired. Remember I sitting there, I got tired. And I remember saying out loud, I need to recharge. I need to stand in the sun. And I need to recharge. I didn't know what the fuck I was saying. My cousins were like, nigga, are you a robot? Cuz think he a robot. I was. Go back to that point. At that point, I understood what the sun was. I understood that the sun fed this body. I understood it at 8 years old. Me not embracing that aspect and now creating an identity to try to remain in the perception, depending on the deception and acceptance of others, it made me shut that down entirely. From 8 years old, when I was like, ooh, the sun is my source of my energy. I was 8 years old, sitting there like, damn. But now, when I went back to this moment that I kept diverting myself from, I realized I went back and I started remembering other memories. Started retrieving my other memory retrieval. The other points in time where I lost my energy. Because everything that you're doing now in this current state is all based on your past state. You just keep replicating it in order to remain the identity that you maintain. You may add a different variance. You may change out a little variable here or there. But whenever the emotion comes up, force you to be present, guess what you're going to do? You're going to go right back to the old you. You're going to try it. And then now, guess what? It's good to go back. It's good to go back there. Because now you get to see it for what it really was. That's your why. That's your why. You're not doing this work. The reason that you maintained the perception based on your traumas and the preservation based on your traumas of going through a hard life or whatever it was is not the reason why you're going to be doing this work. Remember, I talked about it yesterday. The reason that you're doing this work is going to be some of the most heinous shit to your humanity in a whole perspective of yourself. I had to accept that. I had to accept becoming that anti-hero. I had to accept being that anti-hero. I talked about it yesterday. Something as simple as my father calling me the light bearer, or calling me Lucifer, and saying that I am a Cancer, fucked up my mindset to embracing that, yeah, I am the light bearer. I bear the light of the new perspective. I always had a different perspective on things. I always had a different way of approaching things, but I wasn't embracing that quality. Instead, I was looking at the quantity of what I could maintain inside of my space, my wants. I could get everything that I wanted. I didn't know how to suspend or stop it. So it goes into the aspects of your credit report, your emotional credit report. Give you something to think about. And I passed this tidbit out to like 2 people, my 2 members of the Soul Tribe. Exactly. He gave me my father. I had to, like, because this perception of my father, the only thing I can remember about my father at this point in time was he was a super Catholic and he was super religious and he was bound. So I thought that on the surface, in the intellectual aspect, when I started getting into my work, I had to remember, and I've talked about this before, we don't get deep into it on Friday. I had to understand that the religious bounding of him being this super Catholic in this space, that was only a physical manifestation of what he was already bound to in his own internal conflict. So this is when you start thinking about it, you start diverting from, ooh, I'm no longer Christian, I'm no longer Muslim, I'm no longer this religion. Remember, everything that that's just the physical byproduct of what you already were within, based on that already debt that was already present, that was already there. You just, okay, cool, I got rid of this, so I got rid of everything with that. But the identity remained the same. You still were doing the same shit. You wanted to study metaphysics, cool. But you took it from an intellectual standpoint. You wanted to be a Chemite, cool. You wanted it from the intellectual standpoint. You wanted to be an Israelite, cool. Israelite, whatever that you chose, you did it based on your original why. You did it based on the why that you created based on the traumatic experience. That's why you still looked at it with that bias. That diversion control, that's nothing but biases. There's nothing but maintaining that bias. If I can go into a space and automatically say, all I'm doing is exposing where I got the bias at. See that maternal, that the feminine aspect and the masculine aspect, remember they got the shadow aspects of them as well. Just like every deity that you look at, they have a shadow aspect and they got an aspect that's in the light. Exactly, wanting to belong to something. They have a shadow aspect and a light aspect. That's your feminine. So now look into the spaces that you go into. Think about the separated aspects of your shadow if you're not doing the assessment of the lesson. Every space that you go into, when you feed subconsciously, looking into somebody's eyes, you gazing into somebody's eyes, you saying, look me in my eyes, or you not being able to look in somebody's eyes, all of these are little bitty keys that are forcing you to look at yourself in what you're feeding into the space. So when you think about the provide, to provide and protect, a lot of the providing and protecting that you're doing is providing solace for that shadow. A lot of your nurturing, if I never learned how to nurture, then every space that I go into, I'm only going to take the intellectual aspect of nurturing. I'm only going to take the intellectual aspect of guidance. So I'll guide the shadow. So now when I go into the job is me being my greatest diversion, my greatest distraction. And now I'm living in my frustration, my anger. I'm looking for a place to exhibit this anger and put this anger into, this stress into. So now everything in my space is going to enhance that. Everything in my space is going to enhance that. So no matter what the answer is, since I'm looking to be right, I have to admit that I'm looking to avoid. I'm looking to stay guilty. Exactly, stay guilty. I'm looking to stay within this space of myself. Whether I've explored it or not, my why is going to be found inside of that space. Now, when I say this, whether it's the friendship, relationship, whatever it may be, the job, whatever it may be, when we go into this aspect of, I will never tell you to stay in a space to if somebody hitting you upside your head or is abusing you in a certain type of way. Not saying that. Never gonna say that. But even from that space, what did you learn? Even from that space, you learned something. It broke something in, it broke down that identity that you tried to maintain. I was trying to be the best ever. I was trying to do everything in my power to make sure. When you weren't able to do it, how did you feel? I felt guilty. I felt ashamed. I felt powerless. That's the emotional presence. Spirit don't give a shit. Spirit don't give a shit. The universe reacts to you because you are an aspect of that universe. That's what it reacts to. This shit ain't reacting. This shit, oh my God, every time. Think about it like this. The moment that I remember the moment that I said, yo, I really want to get into myself in a depth with myself. Everything that came up was something that triggered the fuck out of me. Everything that came up was something that triggered the shit out of me. Like, man, I don't want to do that part. And I don't want to do, no. What about this? And what about, nah. And I stayed separated from the aspects of my own shadow. I remember my first couple of trips. I remember my first trips off of my psychedelics. That's where I got all of my readings done. The dark aspect that I thought was bad, a lot of the aspects of myself where I know where I'm at now, most of my readings, the reading of like Orisha's reading of my head, the reading of my story, I learned all of that in the aspects of the shadow. I learned a lot of that all in the aspects of my own shadow. I was given that in the shadow. It made me realize that the reason I was so addicted to the underworld, the reason I was so addicted to the underworld in this aspect, the reason I was so addicted to the underworld, addicted to the fast life, addicted to being out in the streets, addicted to that space, that underworld, that presence, was because it was teaching me that quality of myself. Lord and behold, everything inside of my lineage is from the darkest aspects. Everything from my lineage going down to the islands, I'm not in the shit that you saw on the TV. I was always in the spaces. I said, put that line in Puerto Rico. Put that line in between the middle of Puerto Rico. San Juan, nope. Ponce, Manguez, these deeper aspects, that's where I was at. That's where my lineage was. That's where my darkness was. When we go to Asia, go to Japan, I'm telling you, we going into the dark aspects. We going into the mountains where nobody can get to. Now let you take that ownership. Everything that you're doing and you finding yourself, that's going to be your key. It's not going to be the remaining in this perception of this aspect of what you're trying to preserve. Not all of you came from the aspects of, you can trace back to Kemet, you can trace back to those points, but most of my points, you got to go deeper. You got to go deeper. I had to go deep into those aspects. All the way, I talked about it in the podcast, the opening session in the podcast, in the opening segment, I talked about that trail of regret, that trail of tears, and where it led back to. My great-great-grandmother, my great-great-great-grandmother, my great-great-great-grandfather, and everything that they kept, it stopped at this point. I had to admit that I was diverting. I was just furthering the echo of the diversion. I had to go into that. This is what I mean by when we go into these dark spaces, when we have these conversations, whether you coming to me for a consultation or that mini reading, you gotta go past that point. Like I'm gonna give you a point to make you think about some shit. Give you a point to make you think about some shit. When are you going to stop calling white people Europeans? When are you going to stop calling white people Europeans? To avoid the fact that if you want to go, ooh, I know the more science, or I study more science, then you understand Europa, the ones that created the civilization inside of that space. So if I created that civilization, if I'm the original, I created that civilization, that means that was a byproduct of me. That was a byproduct of my behavior. That was a byproduct of my pattern. That was a byproduct of my habit. That's what's sustained inside of that space. Until I accept that, can't do nothing with it. When you gonna stop? When you gonna stop saying the Greek people? When you gonna stop talking about the Greeks and start going back to the Phoenicians, the original Greeks? Everything that was created into that space was a byproduct of your behavior, your patterns, and your habits. When you gonna go into that? When you gonna stop calling the Romans Romans and go back to the Etruscans? See, it's easy for you to go grab a little bit of information to make you feel, they're your children. I've talked about that in plenty of lectures. When you gonna go past the point of that reaction to be like, ooh, they fucked some shit up. They're your kids. They're reflective of your own behaviors. See, it's easy to stay in that light. It's easy to stay in that light. But I've broken this down before. The light is simply preservation, perception, and projection of your understanding of your perspective, your potential, and your purpose. Your whys. From the nothing is your absolute. Our badass kids. From the nothing is the absolute. That is the result of what is inside of your darkness. I don't think there's connection issue. It might be your connection, sis. It's okay. You know, we don't catch it on the replay. When you're looking at that space and you really get dark with it and you really go into this shit and embrace it, remember, this is why I always say you got to remove, the first context that you got to remove is that good and bad, and understand it's positive and negative. That's how you can tap into the duality. See, as long as you got that good and bad still present in your mind, that old moral compass, you can't tap into the duality. You can look at it. You can say, ooh, that's what duality is. You can pull up all the examples of duality, but you miss the lesson. You can get everything that you want, but it's going to cost you everything that you need. You can get everything that you want, but it's going to cost you the lessons of what you need. And you can just keep doing that. Good old song and dance. And then you'll be back here. Which is cool. Which is cool. You can come back here. Because my purpose, as the vessel that I am and what I'm in, my purpose, I know what my purpose was at this point. I know what my potential is at this point. I know what my perspective is at this point. Had to remove those biases in this go round to create this. I've done this before. When I tell you I've done this before, but I did it through those points of biases. So now when I look at, this is teaching Uncle coming through now. When I looked at those perceptions, when I look at the older paradigm, the ones that came from the older paradigm, the SETIs and all those aspects, those are the aspects of me having a bias. Those are the reflections. The reason I would watch them is because they were showing me my bias. Oh, damn, that's my bias in the aspects of the emotional aspect. That's that. So wait, if that's what that is, then what are my parents? What's my mom? What's my father? What's my uncle? What's my sister? What's my brother? What are these family members? If only related to me based on the traumatic experience that I need to understand first. I got to remove the perception where I get triggered. Oh my God, if I don't do this, then I'll never go anywhere. That wanting to belong, that needing to belong, not giving myself the adequate amount of rest so I can now adequately push myself. Yeah, everything that they are badass kids. But no. That's like when I've told people before about messages. If you get a message or you get a download, you get a message or a download, the first thing that you're supposed to do with it is sit with it. See what it shakes up inside of you first before you deliver it. See, a lot of times because I'm going to give you an example. I was so used to being the savior in this context of my family coming to me with their issues. I was the one that they came to whenever something needed to go down into that aspect. I was so used to that when I first came into my work, or first came into my awareness, I would immediately go do the same thing until I caught myself. I noticed that since I shed a layer to get into that space and I felt that energy rush and I shed that layer, I noticed that I was quickly to go try to put that layer back on. So I started sitting with it. More. I started allowing the things to come up. And then I started understanding, damn, I've been my greatest diversion. I've been my greatest distraction. I've been my greatest distraction the entire time. There was moments and points in time, and until I understood that point, I couldn't go back and understand why I did certain things. Because I did it for a reason. That was everything that I was doing was to go find my why. Everything that I was doing was to go find my why. I'm going to go find my stapler. I need to go find my reports. Whether it was me writing up a report, doing a write-up, whatever it was doing, it was all leading me to a point of now. The emotions that I would feel, the guilt that I would feel for writing somebody up. I remember in the same instance of, I've talked about this story before. I remember the first time I had to do a write-up for somebody because they stole a chicken sandwich from the job. And I remember my boss, the divine feminine spirit at that point in time, she came right beside me and she was like, I need pit bulls, not pussies. Said that shit in my damn ear. I was intrigued. I was like, ooh. So when I went into the office, that's how I operated. I learned that aspect. So inside of that space, I knew that it don't matter what it is, it's my reaction to it versus that aspect of that response. So now as I got used to that and got deeper into that, I used my last job as an example. My last job, in the aspects of my last job, where I literally saw myself in every aspect. I accepted seeing myself in every aspect, from my managers to my bosses to my managers, my GM, my employees. All of the examples were right there in front of me. I was like, ooh. I saw inside of my GM. I saw what it was like. I saw in my GM the reflection, and I had to move past, because I had this attitude. I did not like my GM for some reason, because he had this sense of this arrogance based on his title. So like when I was getting triggered by that, I had to look at myself and be like, oh, the reason I don't like this nigga is because I'm still trying to maintain a title. The reason I didn't like my muscle-bounded man-child boss was because I was doing that same shit. I had to accept that. The reason that the employees at my job was lazy was to maintain my independence and not become self-sufficient in myself so I can stay angry. Everything had a lesson, but I had to remove the diversion control. I desire you to be the fucking best. I desire you to be the fucking best. This week's episode on the God Hour podcast, we got deeper into this. This Friday night, when we get into these generational curses, generational traumas, and all these aspects, the collateral clauses, we're going to get deeper into this 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time via the YouTube channel. But in the meantime, tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to get into the God Hour show. You know, the live readings. We're going to get deeper into this topic. live readings. Come and get that reading. If you have not already scheduled your consultation, you are not already in sessions, inbox. All my readings are mini consultations, all the way up to the shadow work consultation. You ready for that? Vibrating and shit. Changing the aspects. I can't make you ready. Gratitude. I can't make you ready. Nobody can make you ready. You have to accept that I, as I opened up with, I was my greatest diversion. Everything outside of me simply enhanced that. I want you to be the fucking best. I desire you to be the fucking best. I desire you to aspire to move past all your little limits that you put on yourself and tap into that fucking greatness. But it's only found in that darkness. Your humility and your integrity. Your perception. Your perspective. Your potential. Your purpose. Your why. Your why is not based on preserving anything that you are now. At this point, what you about to do? I'll see y'all tonight, and I'll see y'all throughout the week. I love you. We love us. Ashe.